So next we have Asen Kovachev, who is also a returning speaker. He's founder of Automaton, and look forward to his presentation.
Okay, how are you guys doing today? This was very interesting. 51% attacks are always sparking these controversial discussions. I think today I might blow your mind because I'll show you how we might be able to achieve security against even 75% or maybe even 100% attacks. That doesn't mean forever, but you'll see. Okay, so I'm Asen Kovachev. I'm a decentralist, means I love decentralization. This is my #1 priority in every decision that we make. I always ask myself, is this decentralized? If it's not, can we make it? And this is why I started this project called Automaton Network. Automaton Network is a decentralized peer-to-peer operating system still in development. We have achieved ability to build your own protocols. We have a thing called smart protocols. I talked about this last year. We're able to run testnets, simulate testnets with 100,000 of nodes. That means if you have some ideas on decentralization, on building your own protocols, you can do this with Automaton today. You can run and research your ideas. However, Automaton is going to be secured by King of the Hill, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. King of the Hill is actually, King of the Hill, what is King of the Hill? King of the Hill is actually a game, and it's a children's game, but it is a brutal children's game, which is probably why it's forbidden in many places. The idea is kids get on a pile, and someone gets to the top of the hill, and he becomes King of the Hill, he or she. And the other children are trying to knock him out of that hill. And whoever gets to knock out the king becomes the king. King is dead, long live the king. What is King of the Hill that we're doing? Well, King of the Hill combines elements from all these consensus mechanisms. It combines elements from proof of work, proof of authority, and proof of stake to give you a mechanism which you can use to do a completely decentralized governance, which is what I'm going to talk mostly about today, but you can do all sorts of other things with it. In fact, I think this is just scratching the surface. We're going to see a lot more that you can do with King of the Hill. Of course, let's just review proof of work. Many of you know, but proof of work is basically mining. Bitcoin is using that. Proof of authority, Libra and Cosmos sort of use that, or are going to. Proof of stake, you know about use. We'll see what Ethereum is going to do. Of course, they have a much better approach in my mind. So let's talk about governance. Governance, basically, all over the world, we have these governments, right? So we have a bunch of people we supposedly elected to represent us, and then they get together and make decisions, right? But of course, we're supposed to have democracy, but every step of the way, there's always some special interests that come in and someone that's swaying things in a different direction. And so let's build our government. So what about us here? We're building our community. We want to govern it, right? We want to make decisions. We don't know each other. We don't know who's in charge. We want to work together in a decentralized fashion. So let's allocate a bunch of seats or slots, as I call them. So let's just say we have here 256 validator slots. And we're all going to just try and get some slots so we can represent ourselves as a community. Okay, so let's just go over this. So what is a validator slot? So basically, it's like a representative in the government. Of course, we're just a community. The way we're using this is for an open source governance. In Automaton, we plan to actually use 64K slots. That's quite a lot. We want to have a fair representation of the community. And then what does a validator do? What is a validator? So a validator takes in one of those slots and participates in the group decisions. They cast their vote. They can do all sorts of other things. You can do validation of transactions. They can be rewarded by the network. But at the minimum, you can do governance without any blockchain or anything else. You can just get votes, and you can look at the majority and say, all right, we made a decision. Yay, hey. Okay, and how does this work? So how do we get the slot? So we're here, we want to be part of that governance. Well, we don't get elected. We actually use proof of work to do that. So this is the key part here about King of the Hill. So miners play this game, King of the Hill. Imagine that each validator slot is like this hill that you want to occupy, and as soon as someone comes in, kicks you out. So you earn that slot, but you don't stay there forever. At any point, someone might come in and push you out. So basically, once we have all the validator slots occupied, we can start making decisions together. And this is a good, fair representation because remember, I care about decentralization, so from day one, and a lot of people tell me, don't do this, you should do something where the core team can control. We're equal with everybody else, so there's equal opportunity that anybody can join and do stuff and convince the community that, hey, we should do this. We don't have, we are not exercising any dictatorship here, which is what happens in a lot of projects that you see out there that are supposedly decentralized, but you have 5, 10, 20 people that really decide what happens with the project. When you have proposals, as soon as you have 50%, you can just say this is a yes or no, we've reached a decision. Or you can put a time limit and say, wow, okay, there was voter apathy, but we have 40% yes, 10% no, then decision is yes. Okay. I don't know what's going on here. All right, so let's look at a proposal here. So someone made a proposal, let's pay 100K from the treasury to fake Toshi for no reason whatsoever. Who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. I don't know who this fake Toshi guy is and why should we pay him. But what I'm showing here, this is like 4,000 slots that have been occupied. The different color means a different difficulty. Need to understand that every slot has its own difficulty. And so these guys occupied it, and now they're going to cast a vote. So after some time, 45% decided, no, we're not going to pay fake Toshi. But this is not enough, because we haven't reached a conclusive answer. So as soon as we have over 50% no, we can close this proposal and say this is rejected. Now, suppose we want to pay 25K for somebody who is going to do a security review. And the community says, yeah, let's do that. Remember, this treasury is run by the community, not me, not you. All of the people together decide, should we spend that money? And so community says, yeah, overwhelming yes, but still not done. Eventually we get 50%, over 50%, so this gets closed. Okay, but how does this work? Okay, so let's dive into the technicals a little bit here. So I said you're mining these slots, but what the hell does that mean? So for those of you who are familiar with elliptic curves, you know that for every private key, you get a public key. And the public key is really a coordinate on the elliptic curve, which is an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So we're only going to care about the x coordinate for the moment. And for those of you who are really scared by these hex numbers, hex digits, let's pretend that this is just you're throwing a dice, right? So let's pretend it looks like that. Every time you're generating a public key, you're just getting a bunch of random dice there, okay? Might be easier to understand. And let's look at what we generated, and let's look at the last two dice, and let's use that to denote our position in the validators. And we're only, for simplicity here, going to use the first two for difficulty, but in the real world, you use the whole thing. All right, so here it is, our small mini government, 6 by 6, and we're going to index it like that. So we have 36 spots we want to fill in this government. Okay, and so there comes the miner A. Last two dice are 3 and 4, so he gets to try to get this slot. So 3 and 1, that's his difficulty, boom, he gets this A slot, okay, because it was unoccupied. Comes miner B, he mines 5 and 3, gets into this position, and we have 6, 5 as of difficulty, so okay, he gets that. And then comes miner C, also 5, 3. He's trying to get that slot, but guess what? His difficulty is smaller than this guy here, so he's like, no, you can't take it, so try again. Okay, and then D comes, he mines 3, 4, he comes in here and says, oh, all right, I have 4, 3, this is greater than A, I'm going to occupy that slot. So it's this game where every slot is taken by somebody, but at any point, a key with a higher difficulty can come and occupy it. And remember, the key part here is that we're all having a fair, equal opportunity. Fair doesn't mean equal distribution, but means equal opportunity for everybody to participate in this game. Okay, so here's how you could maybe visually try to understand how this works. So we have every slot has its own height, its own difficulty. It's completely independent. There's no blockchain in this. There's just ability to take over keys. And it's easy to verify because as soon as you see a signature from a key higher than that, he can claim it. What's important to note here is that this difficulty is actually cumulative. Over time, it gets harder and harder, and there is no time limit like in most proof-of-work algorithms like Bitcoin, where you have 10 minutes to get a block, or in some other currencies, a lot less, where in this case, you could be mining on a small machine, you could be mining for a month, a year, but eventually you get a slot, okay? If you really want to be part of this, you will be part of this. You'll find a way. And this is important here because now I'm going to talk about how this helps secure. So these validator slots, what if someone tries to attack our network? That's the really important thing here. And I'll show you something. So let's say we built our community, we ran this for 100 days, and we built, this is our governance body. We make decisions using these slots. They are representatives of us. And an attacker comes in, and suddenly there's 75% of the mining power is controlled by somebody else. What do you think is going to happen? In any other project, if you have 75% of the mining power, this is it, right? You're toast. Well, not so here, because after 100 days, adversary with 75% of the power, they only get to manage 38% here. This is a simulation, and we'll talk about the actual numbers after this if you like. But basically, the reason is because this is cumulative. Means that for you to take over this network, you have to spend more than 50% of everything that has been done by the community from the beginning. Means if we run a community for 2 years, and someone comes in and wants to take over that community, they have to spend at least an equivalent of at least a year of what we as a community put in to take it over, and even then that would be temporary. So yeah, after 200 days, which is 2 times longer than we had our community, someone spent so much money trying to take us over, you know. And what if our community was 2 years strong? Is someone going to put 2 years worth of whatever we spent on mining to take us over? I don't know. And the other thing is that you will probably notice when this happens. Okay, so with that said, let's just look at some of the King of the Hill features. Again, we're using mining to earn these validator slots through the King of the Hill game. And it's very important. We don't mine hashes here. We mine keys. And these keys have a purpose. They are used to actually cast those votes. So these keys can be trusted when we see a key with a high difficulty because we know someone put in the work. And when you have a key that's eligible, higher than somebody's slot, you become the king. You push off the previous person, you become the king, and you can now start be part of the decision-making process for that community. Also important, keys are non-transferable. I can't just sell you that key. Well, I can tell you that I sold it to you, but you know what? The private key stays with me, so it doesn't really make sense to sell private keys. It just defeats the purpose. Then the other interesting thing is that this is also pool resistant because, again, only one person really makes sense to hold the key. So why the hell are you going to do mining pools when if 1,000 people are mining one key, who is actually running the show at the end? It's possible that you maybe organize mining pools where you pay people to earn the key for yourself, but they just get paid. But that's the same like doing a mining contract where I pay money to hire a bunch of, set up a mining farm or something, you know. So that's not impossible. You can pay, but you can't really do mining pools. So that also means this algorithm is friendly for solo mining. And we are actually going to release friendly software for all major platforms. So any of you can just download this and run a miner, which would be a lot easier than setting up on mining rigs, all that other stuff that you currently have to do for Bitcoin and other Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies. Another thing to note is that in Automaton, we're actually going to do something interesting because we split everything in zones. there's actually, over time, there's going to be more and more validator slots because each zone is basically using validators for the consensus. So as the network grows, there's going to be more and more validator slots, which means over time, getting a validator slot is actually going to be easier, not harder. And I believe that this King of the Hill can also be used to push decentralization for proof of authority and proof of stake to the next level. Like, if EOS used that, no one was going to complain and say, oh, EOS is centralized, there are some people controlling it, because all of you had the chance to become a validator and be one of those 21. It was equal opportunity for everybody. Same thing goes for proof of authority. Something like Cosmos could use something like that to really distribute it, because right now Cosmos, I believe, is just giving keys to parties they trust. I don't blame them, but that's centralization. The same thing goes for Libra. Libra is giving it to those 100 companies. I personally don't like that. I said I'm a decentralist. So today I have shown you how you could use King of the Hill to create a governing body and to use that to come to make a decision process as a decentralized community. I've also shown you how this method minimizes centralization because it makes pools pretty much obsolete, and it can push decentralization to the next level for proof of stake and proof of authority, as well as DAOs. I mean, if you want to set up a DAO, I think that's actually a good way to do it, or any project, because why do STOs or any of these investment techniques? We don't like this method. We are actually going this route. We're going to build this from scratch without any extra funding. We're just going to start this from day one being completely decentralized. So again, we use proof of work to generate a decentralized proof of authority, which can be then used with any of proof of stake algorithms. And this is how I give you King of the Hill, which can push decentralization to the next level and give you decentralized governance. And so I am now open to questions from the audience. Thank you.
Fantastic. We have 2 minutes if we can get a question. I see a raised hand over there. Thank you, sir. You've been very active today, asking many questions.
How does this conference? Because I'm just curious about a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna play the devil now, and I think of myself, I'm not pretty stupid, but I will try to ask questions to explain myself about the whole concept. Let's pretend we have community of, let's say, 100 people, which are equally, for the sake of this example, distributed in, let's say, 10 people in Bulgaria, 10 people in Serbia, 10 people in Greece, 10 in Manila, 10 in the USA, how many are in Finland and in China. So we have our supposedly 100 people in our community. So using automaton, what could be the, let's say, what governance could we achieve in a community where all the cultures are so different? I mean, I'm trying to move it closer to an actual reality and the people think and act right now. And how can we apply this technology and this process to govern or to make a consensus for such group of people?
Okay, so if I understood the question correctly, is if we have 100 people from all over the world, from completely different cultures and from completely different backgrounds, how would they reach consensus when they have a completely different mentality?
What kind of decisions will they take using the technology?
Right. So just to make something clear here, our focus at the moment is mostly on governing open source projects and making decisions within these communities. I think we have to start somewhere. I'm not here to tell you that we can govern the world in this way, but I also like this approach because I believe that still to this very day, proof of work is the best way to really truly decentralize things. I know that we could use identities, but then you kind of have a problem with privacy. If we know we know exactly who these people are, then we can just use one vote from each, and then that's enough, right? But then you have issue with privacy. The question you're asking is more about cultural, like, how do we make the proposal such that, are they ever going to come to a consensus? Is it, so again, this is an experiment, and so you're only as good as your community. I mean, if in your community there's 100 people from all over the world, but they find the language to discuss and explain what they're voting on, and come to an agreement, then they are successful. If they're not successful, then they need to change their ways. I mean, I don't think this is a technological problem. The question that you're asking me is more about how do we bridge the gap between cultures. So in our case, this is more about open source projects where that gap is a little bit bridged by the fact that we all understand technology.
But can you give us another example of how and why we would use this technology as a use case?
This could also be a very good way for you guys to start a new crypto project, a cryptocurrency project where you're not doing ICOs, you're not doing STOs, you're not doing any of these scams, and you're just saying, hey, we have some ideas here, let's get together and see how far we can take it. And people can just issue their assets this way. So everything is mined, but yet you have decentralized decision-making from the get-go. And this is a really hard problem usually to fix. A lot of projects will tell you this. Well, we had to start centralized. We had to start somewhere, right? And now, after 2 years have passed, and we already own this much of that token, we're now decentralizing it. We did the vote, so we're decentralized. But no, you weren't from the beginning, and there's special interests from the beginning, and you know it, and you don't say it because it hurts your cause. So I believe that if a project is really open, where we're taking a huge risk as developers here. We're opening ourselves up and saying, if someone's better than us, he's going to take us over. And we're fine with that. I think this creates a good, healthy competition and also allows people with good ideas to actually make them happen and not have developers say, I don't know, this is not in our strategy. So how are we better than the corporations? I want to see full decentralization where there is no politics, there is no strategy, there is no, all these things that are really meant to help somebody, but telling the public, oh, this is decentralized, it's good for you. And I'm showing you because I'm not getting anything from it. And it's clear that I'm interested in the decentralization first and foremost, not lining my own pockets. So.
There you have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.